Personal growth is like pulling on two ends of a rubber band. If you don't lower the tension, it's going to snap right back. So, over the course of your life, have you ever felt like every time you've taken one step forward, you inevitably take one, two, or even three steps back, no matter how hard you try not to? It's almost like every time you gain some success, you end up unintentionally making silly mistakes, bad decisions, or unconsciously draw unwanted experiences into your reality. Do you start to make healthy changes in your life? And when you finally start to see some progress, you have an injury or a setback that forces you to stop and eventually you slip back into old behavior patterns? Or do you find that every time you start to make financial gains or finally seeing some progress in that area, it's followed by a car or home repair or unexpected bill? Or alternatively, you blow the money on some new equipment or purchase that you really don't need, but you rationalize to yourself that you do. Do you wonder why you can't seem to break past a seemingly self-imposed glass ceiling that you keep bumping up against over and over again? Like you're stuck under a frozen lake, constantly trying to get out and find the opening. But every time you get close to the surface, you just keep hitting your head on the ice. Well, if any of this rings true for you, first of all, know that you are not alone. The process of growth and change can feel really challenging. And it's not as simple to overcome as just telling ourselves a few daily positive affirmations. There is a lot of stuff going on in our subconscious that we either literally cannot see, which would be our unconscious shadow aspects, or that we've become aware of, but we just don't really know how to go about making a lasting shift. Today, I'm going to be breaking down what's going on with this pattern that we often experience and what you can do to get yourself out of this vicious cycle. Hi, friend, and welcome back. My name is Steph, and if you've seen any of my previous videos, you may start to recognize how much I love a great analogy. And today's video is no exception. Today, I want to introduce you to my rubber band theory of self-improvement. This theory has been developed from having an understanding of how nature works, but also from the trial and error of my own life. You see, I have been a self-imposed glass ceiling person. It started when I got into the college of my dreams with a double major in art and music, which I'd been looking forward to and working towards for several years. But at the end of my freshman year of college, what happened? I got pregnant. The first of my grand self-sabotaging behaviors. So then I switched my major to psychology, thinking I need to be a little bit more practical now that I was going to be responsible for another human being. And I got my degree and graduated on time with my class. I was even accepted into my dream graduate school at the University of Illinois in the neuroscience PhD program. I received a full ride plus $28,000 a year graduate assistantship stipend. But after the first semester, I dropped out. Now, this pattern would repeat itself in my life over and over and over, all the while I had no idea what was going on. I would beat myself up and go into deep shame spirals with each incident, leading to further depression and uncertainty that I would ever be able to break past my own self-imposed glass ceiling. This pattern had such a control of my life that it became something I could no longer ignore. So I started to take a closer look at what was really going on and why. So enter the rubber band theory. So what is the rubber band theory? All right, this is a theory to help understand what happens when we set out to make a positive shift in our lives and move beyond our current level of being, but something keeps holding us back. To understand this theory, we first need to understand three things. So the first thing is that there are two versions of ourselves at work at all times, the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, or what we could call the light and the shadow sides of ourselves. The second is the law of homeostasis, or the law of balance in the universe. And the third is the law of attraction. So within our conscious mind are all of the beliefs and desires that we think we have. It's the part of ourselves that uses cognitive thought to say things like, oh, I definitely believe in myself, and I know I can easily make this change if I want to. Or I'm smart, I'm confident, I'm capable. It's the part that makes plans and lists and spreadsheets and vision boards. It's the part that tells ourselves and others who we want to be. But then there's our subconscious mind, our shadow. What lies in the shadow? All of our deeply ingrained belief systems that have been programmed into our subconscious over the course of our lifetime. Beliefs like, I'm not good enough, I'm a loser, I always ruin everything, I'm a failure, change is hard, I can't do this, money is hard to earn, I'll never amount to anything. These limiting beliefs sometimes use words to speak these phrases to us directly, but often they play out in much more subtle ways. They play their cards by causing us to ignore our own intuition or the advice we would give ourselves. They trick us into believing that we're a victim of our circumstances, of our upbringing, of our society, and that change really isn't possible. So we should just settle for a life of shrinking and making ourselves small. They convince us we don't deserve more out of life and that we should just be grateful to even be alive at all. Which, yes, we should be grateful for that. But that way of looking at it comes from a place of shrinking and restriction rather than of expansion and aliveness. These subconscious belief systems may seem rather insidious when we lay them out all out on the table like that, but really they're simply protective mechanisms. They are learned beliefs that we formed as adaptive coping mechanisms when we needed them as a small child or in certain situations. And perhaps they were passed down to us from previous generations who needed them. They kept us from standing out too much and drawing negative attention to ourselves from a familial or social survival point of view. But now that we're adults who are capable of caring for ourselves, and we no longer rely on a family or a social structure for our base level of survival, for the most part, they've actually now become maladaptive as we try to grow and become the best version of ourselves, or as we try to enter a new level of lifestyle and prosperity. So these two parts of ourselves, the subconscious and the conscious, are always working in tandem for better or worse. Now, the second thing we need to understand is the law of homeostasis. Our three-dimensional universe operates on a system of duality: night, day, light, dark, male, female, hot, cold, black, white, positive, negative, etc. The universe relies on keeping both of these polar opposites in balance in order to remain operational. Everything in nature functions within this balance, and homeostasis is the operating principle to maintain that balance. So, for instance, if you swing a pendulum to the left, it will swing back to the right with equal force. As Newton's third law states, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Our bodies, for example, have built-in homeostasis that operates much in the same way as a home thermostat. When the temperature in the house rises above what it has been set to, the air conditioning kicks on to bring the temperature back down. This is a very simplified explanation of how homeostasis works, but that's really all we need for this to make sense. So the third thing we need to understand is the law of attraction. Now, you've probably heard of the law of attraction as a way to manifest the things you want, like more money, a fitter body, fancier cars and houses. However, the law of attraction is often oversimplified as a way to sell people on getting the things they want just by wishing for them in their mind. What we need to understand is that the law of attraction is always at play, including for the things we don't want. You see, we don't actually manifest what we want. We manifest who we are. According to quantum mechanics, the energetic state of being that we are in determines the frequency at which we perceive life. Like a radio dial, all frequencies are available, and the frequency that we are tuned to determines which channel of life that we are going to be able to listen to or experience. So if we're in a frequency of scarcity and limitation, our experiences will be a reflection of that. To have a different experience, we have to tune into our desired frequency. I made a video all about how to get ourselves in tune, so you can check that out here. Now let's get to the rubber band. So let's imagine that the two parts of ourselves, the conscious and the subconscious, represent each end of the rubber band. The base level down here represents our subconscious. This is our comfort zone, our limiting beliefs that are hidden in our shadow, and our survival instincts. The other end, the top end, represents our desire for growth, for change, and for expansion, our goals and plans, and the things we use cognitive thought to tell ourselves. When we pull on the top part of the rubber band by taking action towards our goals, while our subconscious shadow side is still in the same position, we introduce tension or resistance. The farther that we pull, the more tension we introduce into the system, and the law of homeostasis has no choice but to snap us back down to release that tension. So the metaphorical air conditioning unit kicks on and brings us back to the baseline that we have been programmed to stay in. While we might start to draw some desired experiences to ourselves through the law of attraction with our conscious focus on growth, as long as our subconscious state remains the same, the law of homeostasis combined with the law of attraction will snap us back down into that lower frequency, and it will be attracting things like injuries, unexpected bills, income loss, or silly mistakes and blunders that we didn't intend to make. So now I want us to focus on the solution. As Einstein famously said, no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. So what we need to do is, for every area we want to see growth in our lives, we must continually reduce the tension of the rubber band and raise our level of consciousness. Now, for different aspects of our lives, we might have different levels of tension. So there may be areas where it's a little bit easier for us to, we might have a little bit easier time growing and overcoming that. And then it might just be a little bit easier. There may be less tension introduced. And then there might be areas where we have a lot of tension really quickly, or the rubber band is just so thick that moving it is quite difficult. And that base level, we have a harder time allowing that to come up to meet the top. So depending on what area we're focusing on, things might be a little bit more challenging or a little bit easier as we work to make those improvements. So how do we reduce this tension or resistance? First, we need to recognize that it's there. We can discover tension is present if we're intentionally working to improve something. We know that tension will arise. So anytime there's a gap between our present reality and our desired reality, we know there's going to be tension. We can also know that tension exists by the presence of unwanted experiences showing up in our lives. So sometimes our mind is super strategic about how it presents growth and change to us that we're actually not consciously aware that tension has been introduced into the equation or that resistance is present. But if we recognize the patterns in our lives, like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, such as starting to get in shape and then having an injury, making or manifesting a salary increase just to receive a bill or financial loss for almost that exact amount, etc. This is an indication that there is tension present between the two systems of our mind. If this is resonating with you, do me a favor and go ahead and tap that like button real quick to help this reach more people who might benefit from it. Okay, so how do we reduce this tension? Well, how do we reduce the tension of a rubber band? We need to bring the two ends closer together again. So we can either keep the top end close to the bottom, or we can bring the bottom up closer to the top. Since you're here watching this video, you are clearly someone who wants to move the top end of the rubber band, and you have no desire to stay stagnant in your life. You want to have growth. You want to change some things. And this is an admirable quality, and you should start by giving yourself a pat on the back. But don't pat yourself on the back too hard, or you're going to introduce more tension into that rubber band. So to reduce tension, it's best to make gradual changes that our systems can come into homeostasis with minimal rubber band snapping. Similarly to how an airplane cannot just go in a linear path to reach its cruising altitude, it has to stair step and acclimate to each new level. We need to treat our subconscious the same way. So we want to start with making smaller incremental changes and then give your subconscious some time to catch up. Let's use the example of weight loss since it's an easy one for everyone to somewhat universally relate to. Let's say a person has the desire to lose 40 pounds or 18 kilos. So they start tracking everything they eat, cutting in their calories, and exercising every single day. If they previously did not exercise at all and didn't pay any attention to what or how much they were eating, what do you think is the likelihood that this person would be able to sustain these changes in the long term? This would be like the airplane going straight up to 30,000 feet without leveling out for a bit at lower altitudes. It would burn up too much fuel and the plane would be headed for disaster. Now, in order for growth to occur, there does have to be some tension introduced into the equation at first. The airplane has to start out with a steep enough ascent to get up high enough to get out of the range of nearby buildings and mountains and give itself a bit of buffer time should something happen to one of its engines. So we do want to introduce some tension into our rubber band. Otherwise, no growth will happen at all, and we'll just kind of stay here. The key is in bringing the subconscious limiting beliefs up into a higher frequency to match our consciousness at the new level of growth. So with our weight loss example, we want to start taking some action, but we need to bring up our beliefs about ourselves and our ability to be successful in order to reduce this tension. This may at first seem like an impossible task, but that again is another limiting belief. So how to reduce the tension of our belief systems? I want to break this down into an easy to follow 3-step process for you so you can really easily start to incorporate this into your daily activities without having to introduce more tension into the system with new things that you have to focus on every day. So the first step is shining a light on the shadow aspect. The only way to remove a shadow is to shine a light on it. So the light is our awareness that this limiting belief is present. Then second, we want to neutralize the limiting belief. The limiting belief might say losing weight is hard or making money is hard. And so what we can do is start to ask it a question like, is this 100% true? Now try to find a neutral thought that the subconscious mind can accept. concept, such as, I am willing to take action steps towards my goals. We want to keep our thoughts in the neutral territory so that we're not continuing to add more tension to the system as we are making these shifts. So replacing a limiting belief with a positive affirmation is actually going to introduce even more tension because the subconscious mind still says, no, I don't believe that. We want to bring it up to neutral so that it just releases a little bit of tension and we sort of neutralize the charge. And then the third step is to neutralize our nervous system. So our nervous system is tied to our subconscious, and our sympathetic nervous system gets triggered when we introduce tension to our rubber band. Keeping the body calm is an important aspect of our ability to affect change in our lives. So we can do this through breathing exercises, meditation, or even regular exercises like going for a walk, anything that will interrupt the state of our sympathetic nervous system being activated and calm the body down, and basically, again, neutralizing that charge. If you remember from my video about the subconscious mind, the way that it's formed and the way that subconscious beliefs are imprinted into our mind is either through repetition or emotional charge being connected to the memory or experience. So anytime we have a subconscious belief present that is working against us, and while it might be there as a protective mechanism, but it's actually become maladaptive now, and it's actually holding us back from reaching our desired results, then what we want to do is remove that emotional charge from that belief system and shift our focus over to the new belief. So to simplify this even more, you could remember the acronym ANN, A-N-N, awareness, neutralize, neutralize. So we start by shining the light of awareness on the limiting belief that's coming up. We neutralize the belief, and then we neutralize the body and the emotional charge. So the simpler the approach we take, the easier it is to actually remember and stay mindful of this throughout our day. So to put this into practice, you can write this on some sticky notes and put it around your house to remind yourself throughout the day, particularly around things that will be associated with the behaviors that you're wanting to change and those triggers. So if you're wanting to put some healthier eating habits into practice, for instance, you can put the acronym ANN, A-N-N, or awareness, neutralize, neutralize on a post-it note on your fridge or on your scale. And every time you see it, you'll remember to become aware of your limiting beliefs and work to neutralize them. Or if you're wanting to be more positive and kinder to yourself, stick this on the mirrors that you look at every day when you're getting ready. So if a limiting belief comes up that tries to tell you, ew, you are so ugly, or you look so old, or whatever other unkind thoughts that our subconscious will try to get us to believe, you can remember to put a light on that belief, neutralize it by asking, is this 100% true? And hint, the answer is always no. And then neutralize your nervous system by relaxing your sympathetic nervous system and switching over to your parasympathetic. So for instance, that thought of looking at yourself in the mirror and thinking that you're ugly is probably going to activate your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response, and it's going to trigger an actual physiological response in your body. So we want to neutralize that, like I said, and we want to switch from our sympathetic nervous system to our parasympathetic nervous system, where we're operating in a much more calm place and we're depolarizing that negative charge that some of these unconscious beliefs have that kind of keep them alive within our system. Or if you're wanting to improve your relationship with money, anytime you check your bank balance or before opening any bill, do this exercise before you log in to your account or before you open a piece of mail to neutralize any limiting beliefs before they have the chance to take over and snap you back down to the bottom of the rubber band. Now, this practice won't produce instantaneous overnight results, but if you continue to work with this, it will produce gradual results, and those are the ones that are more likely to last anyway. Like I said, we want to gradually increase tension and then come back up to homeostasis by releasing the tension, by bringing our subconscious beliefs up to a neutral point. We don't need to bring them all the way up to meet where our conscious mind is trying to take us, but we do need to neutralize them so they don't continue to pull back and keep having us go back down over and over and just continuing to experience this snapping effect in our lives where we just feel like we're just constantly in a state of struggle and this negative feedback loop. So to get out of this, we just need to release some of this tension, get those thoughts neutralized, get our body neutral, and we start to work this process. You're going to start to see the impact that this will have in your life. I actually do this practice with myself every single day. Whenever I notice that I'm starting to have a limiting belief come up, and trust me, I've got a lot of them that I'm still working through. I'm just, just like you and working through this stuff. And so anytime I notice my mind starting to go to that negative place, or if I notice something's still holding me back that I thought I had already overcome, well, what I do is I stop and I start to put my attention on it, I shine some light on that area, and I start to neutralize those thoughts, get my body into a neutral state. And I found that this has really helped me, not just with seeing improvement, but also just experiencing more peace and joy throughout the day, which in and of itself is a really great reward for doing this work. So friend, thank you for tuning in to another episode of From the Depths. If you got any value out of this, do me a favor and tap that like button. And until next time, keep rising. Okay, now I have to pick up all these rubber bands.